Okay, so this is part two. It's called authentication. So we're going to learn how to authenticate, grab the user's information, and store it in the global state. So open up the re the folder called authentication to follow along. And just to get an overview of what we did last time is we set up a React application in which we have one at the moment one route, so one page, I guess. So if we go here in home, what I did was I have this paragraph, which is just Material UI. It's almost like styled components, but with Material UI. And so it's pretty much a p tag, and we're gonna say welcome user. So how do we get this user variable? So just just as a recap, we're gonna be storing the user information in this global in global state inside this auth slice. So here we have a variable called user, and we're going to be populating this variable with the user information after requesting authentication from the user. So right now it's null, but after that information that data gets injected into here, we're going to have eventually address, name, public key, and other stuff. Okay, so the question is where are we going to be requesting authentication? So in our application, if we go here, we have this global wrapper. So this global wrapper will be accessible no matter in which page the user is. So it's important because let's say they're in a certain page and they refresh. Well, now we lost all the information in the Redux store, and we'll have to re-authenticate them in order to get that information. So we need something that's globally available. So that's why I created this global wrapper. Inside this global wrapper, we're going to have a use effect over here. So on first mount, we're going to be executing this function. And in this function, as you could see, the first thing we're doing is we're going to use our first Quartal request. And the action is get user account. Okay, so what does get user account do? Okay, so let's go to the documentation over here. So this action get user account will give us this response, address and public key. Now, this is an action that requires user approval. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's check with QBlog. So when you first enter QBlog, you'll have this pop-up. Now, the reason why there's this pop-up is because the developer executed that function, executed that action, um, this action, get user account. And so it's asynchronous, so we're going to have to wait for the user to accept or reject. But if they do accept, we'll get this response, address and public key. Now that's not enough. We not only need the address, we actually need their name in order to publish stuff because everything published under QDN requires a name. So if they want to publish a post, well, we need their name. So the second thing that we'll have to do is, if we go back to our code, is we have this action, after we got the address, we have this action called get account names. Now, as right now, every Quartal account, you can only have one name per account at the moment. But so that's why if you check over here for this action, so you just have to put the address, you'll get, oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong one. Um, the one that we need is get account names. Is that the one we're using? Get account names, yeah, sorry. So we're gonna put the address here, and we're getting in an array of accounts. But right now, there's only one name per address. So we're just gonna take the first one that comes. It's gonna be the only one at the moment. In the future, there's gonna be more than one, but for now, it's just gonna be one. All right, so that's what we're doing over here. So we first requested permission to get their address. Then we got their address, we put it here, and we're going to get an array of names, but we're just going to take the first one. So once we have their name, we're going to do this patch using Redux called set user. What does set user do? We go back to the slice over here, set user. We're going to be populating our user variable here, our global user variable. And we're going to populate it with, well, we're going to populate it with account that we got over here, which is, if we go back over here, we're going to get the address, we're going to have the public key, and we're going to have the name. So account is public key, address, and name. So that's what we're going to have in this user variable. Address, public key, name. That's pretty much what we need from the user. So that's authentication. So once there's user dot name, if we go back to home, we're going to have access to the to the user's name. So I just called it username, but we're accessing the global store, which is under state auth user name. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a bit how to access that information through the Redux extension. But most of you probably know already. But we're going to put this into practice. So just to recap, we have this global wrapper that will ask the user when they enter the application for their user account information. And from that, we're able to get a name. And then we're injecting that information into a global parameter, global variable. All right, so let's do npm run build to build this application. And then we're going to publish it on Quartal, and we're going to see if it works. Okay. So go here, we go part 2. I'm going to delete this one. I'm going to create a new zip file. Select that, and then preview. So the first thing that should happen is I'm going to enter it into it, and the authentication should pop up. Yes. And if I press accept, welcome Qorbit. There you go, top left. Okay, so let's go check the Redux store. All right, we open that, and we have to go into the React one. All right, so you could see that we did that set user, and if we go in the action here, we'll see what's the payload, what's populating that, what's going to populate that user variable. So in the state here, we could see our store, and it's divided into notifications at the moment and authentication. So if you go to authentication, then you have user, and then you have name. So auth username, that's how, if you go back here in home, see we have state, and then auth user name. And then we'll have access to the name. I called it username, but you could call it whatever you want here. And welcome, Qorbit, or whatever name. Anyway, so that's authentication. Now that's really cool. Now we have the name, and then in the next lesson, next video, we'll be publishing a post. But before you're able to publish anything, you'll need to get the user's information. Okay, that's it for this.